Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 16 of the CCAU 2G show, where we're trying to help you become a better person. Today, we have a special guest, the Fairy Odd Father, and he is going to explain to everybody how to obtain your pilot license. Fairy Odd Father, I have one question for you. The mindset you need to have going into training. You talk about that and what that is.
All right. So first and foremost, like whenever you're going into anything new, especially being a pilot, like the one thing you need to always have is your why. You got to remember why you're doing it, and you have to remember that the whole entire time because there's going to be ebbs and flows. You're going to have days where it's going to be very stressful, where you're spending a whole lot of money and feeling like you're wasting money or you're not learning. There's going to be days where you're going to think maybe this isn't for me. But if you were called to doing this, right, you have to understand that you're here for a reason, and your mindset has to be about, do I really love flying? Do I really enjoy this? If you're coming into this with the mindset of, oh, I want to be a pilot because I heard it makes a lot of money, you'll be faced with a lot of disappointment throughout your training and throughout the early stages of your career, because while becoming, an airline pilot, using being a pilot as a profession, while it is a very lucrative profession, it's like any other profession where you'll have to put in some time, and during that time, there's not a lot of money involved. So you'll have to have the mindset of, do I really love this? Is this really what I want to do? Because if at any point I didn't get that dream job, or I lose my medical or something like that, would I still want to do this? Would I still be happy with the training that I got and with the time that I spent training if I could never do this again? If you can't say that, then you might be doing it for the wrong reason, or you might not make it through the training just simply off of the fact that you don't have enough motivation to make it through those tough times.
You spoke about, do you love flying? Do you suggest that people take like a beginner flying course to see if they want to commit to it before they enter the military, or take out a bunch of money for a loan to pursue their dreams?
So actually, that's a great question. So there's this thing called a discovery flight. A discovery flight is where you can actually get in the plane with an instructor and get experience actually flying, and you actually get to be on the controls for the first time. It's your first introductory flight, and it's a great way to see, how does my body react to being in the plane? How do I feel when I'm up at altitude? How do I feel when the plane is stalling, or I'm inducing G-force? You get a chance to feel that before you commit. And I think everybody should take at least one or two discovery flights, maybe even more. I took three discovery flights before I started training, um, just to get a feel for it, just to see, is this something I can see myself doing for the rest of my life? Or I feel kind of queasy, I feel kind of uneasy about being in the plane. Maybe this isn't the right thing for me. It's a good way for you to save yourself from investing a whole lot of money on something you're not really sure about.
Now, that discouragement part, is it shown in the beginning of the phase of your your you going into your dream chasing, or is it in the middle, or is it during the time with no pay?
So it can actually be all of those actually. So that's also a great question. Like it can be very it's discouraging in the very beginning because there will be times where you hit plateaus, training plateaus. You're in your training, and at some point, you feel like you're not getting better, or you're wondering why you've done so many landings and you haven't been able to land the plane as well as you want to. Or let's say you're in the middle of your training and you realize you've spent a whole lot of money, or you realize that the timeline that you set out for yourself is a lot longer than what you anticipated, or while you're in that time of your early stages of time building and you're at a low paying job, or you're instructing and it's getting mundane and you're continuously just in the traffic pattern, or you're just seeing the same students doing the same thing every day, it can become discouraging. So those are the times when you have to remember your why, and you have to go out and experience something different, whether it's pick up another job so that finances don't stress you out during that time, or whether it's going out and taking a flight with a friend, something that brings you back to that joy of flying so that it doesn't start to discourage you so much that you want to quit.
So in the early stages, you may experience butterflies, right? So how do you manage that expectation to have that feeling throughout the entire process of obtaining your license?
The best way to manage expectations when flying is to really not put any expectations on your training in the first place. One of the things I hear from students a whole lot is, I want to get my private pilot done in 2 months. A lot of times there's a preset timeline that they already kind of have worked out in their head, and before they actually understand how much work and how much time can actually have to go into this. Or I'll hear students say they want to solo in 10 hours or they want to solo in 15 hours. And so they become very discouraged or they become disappointed in themselves, and they kind of lose that initial joy that brought them in it because their timeline is not going. So the best way to do that is to actually, by managing expectations, you don't set any expectations for yourself. You come in there with an open, free, and clear mind that I'm here to become the best pilot I can be. I'm not here to get done in 2 years and get to the airlines, or get done and go and fly that private jet. I mean, if you do have that set up, more power to you. But you want to come in with the mindset, I want to be a great pilot, because being a great pilot, being a safe pilot, is going to keep you alive and keep you flying for a long time. Being in a rush doesn't really have the benefit that people think it does, right? Because being in a rush could potentially get you harmed in this career.
So you spoke about, the expectation and how to manage it. I want to know, when you were a young child, how did you take that child imagination and turn it into a preset focus on obtaining your license?
When I was a child, my first introduction to flying was by seeing the United States military, seeing the Navy, and being very fascinated by aircraft carriers and jets flying on the aircraft carriers. But at the time, I knew that you had to have perfect vision in order to fly. So I didn't really understand civil aviation, nor did I understand. I did not know any pilots. I did not understand the career at all. Um, and so I really kind of didn't dream about being a pilot much as a kid because I didn't even think it was possible. And that's why I think exposure is such a big thing. And I was able to kind of reimagine myself as a pilot when I became an adult and I actually met pilots and I actually got exposed to aviation, and I was told about taking a discovery flight, and I jumped on the opportunity, and I think I just fell in love the moment I was able to get into an airplane. It was honestly the most thrilling experience ever. And just being able to take off and see the sky above you and being able to land the plane. I mean, it was just an amazing experience. It was, even though I started my training as an adult, it felt like a childhood experience in that moment. And so whether you're, an adult who's just being exposed to industry, or whether you're a child, exposure is key. Just knowing pilots, or knowing what's out there, knowing where your local airports are, um, seeing airplanes up in person, like that type of exposure is it can transform your life, because it can give you that initial spark you need in order to actually go out there and start your training.
So during training, how much science is actually involved? And can you talk about the science briefly so our listeners can understand what to actually, study before turning this into a career?
So science is everything in aviation. When it comes to flying, right, just being able to get the plane off the ground and into the sky, that's all science. Also, understanding the human body and how it reacts to like the actual physiology of flying, and then understanding weather and how the environment plays a factor. So the type of sciences I would say are major focus. Physics, number one, first and foremost. If you want to understand how a plane flies, how a plane sustains flight, the different forces acting on the airplane at all times, the different theories that go into how a plane stalls versus how a plane lands, right? Why the speeds are the way they are, why the different surfaces of the airplane do what they do. All of that has to do with physics. The one thing I love to say is that physics is all around us. So almost everything we interact with is physics, even when we drive our cars. So that's the big one. The other one is meteorology, understanding the Earth, weather patterns, how wind flows, how that impacts, how the environment impacts the physics of flying, right? Because they tie hand in hand, right? You need to have an ideal atmosphere in order to be able to have ideal flight conditions, in order to have ideal engine performance. So understanding meteorology, understanding weather, because some weather is unsafe for flying, and some weather might compromise the safety of the flight. And then, and there's a little bit of biology in there too, when you have to understand the physiology of the human body and how it interacts with being in altitude, and how it interacts with sensory organs, and how the brain works, how the eyes work. Those different things also play a major factor in becoming a pilot.
Okay, everybody. The Fairy Oddfather spoke deeply and heavily and passionately about 6 topics. The mindset you need to have going into training. Do you love flying? And he gave us a gem with the Discovery flight, a great way to see. Thirdly, he talked about the sacrifice, commitment, encouragement, expectation management, and how to attack your childhood dream of flying. Lastly, the science. So, the Fairy Oddfather, we appreciate you for taking your time out your day to speak to us on how to obtain your pilot license. Everyone at the CCAU 2G show,